1 year after my husband died, I paid workers to fix up his old office. I was sitting in church singing songs when my phone started shaking in my hand. The name on the screen said Carlos Martinez, the building man. My stomach felt funny. Carlos never called me unless something bad happened. I walked out of church as fast as my old legs could move. I'm 63 years old and sometimes my knees hurt when I walk too fast. The air outside felt cold on my face. Don't forget to like this video and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I answered the phone and said hello. Mrs. Thompson, Carlos said. His voice sounded scared. We found something in your husband's office. Something really strange. You need to come home right now. What did you find? Asked him. My hands were shaking. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, I can't tell you on the phone. But Mrs. Thompson, please bring your sons with you. Both of them. Don't come by yourself. The phone went quiet. I stood there looking at my phone. The church bells were ringing really loud. Don't come alone. Why would he say that? What could workers find that would make me need my sons there? My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped my phone when I called my oldest son Robert. He picked up after 3 rings. His voice sounded sleepy and happy. Mom, I'm eating breakfast with Sarah and the kids. Robert, I need you at the house right now, I said. My voice was shaking. Bring your brother James too. What's wrong? He asked. The workers found something strange. Carlos says we all need to be there together. I heard him put his hand over the phone. I could hear Sarah's voice getting loud and angry. I couldn't hear what she said, but she sounded really mad. Mom, can this wait until later? He started to say. Carlos said not to come alone, Robert. He said to bring both of you. He waited. Then he said, we'll be there in 20 minutes. I got in my car and drove home. My mind was thinking about so many things. My husband Henry had been gone for 1 whole year now. 1 year without him sitting next to me at dinner. The doctors said his heart just stopped working one day. He was in his office reading papers for his job. Then he was gone. Just like that. His office stayed exactly the same since that cold winter morning. I couldn't make myself go in there. It hurt too much to see his empty chair and remember he would never sit there again. But 3 weeks ago, on the day that would have been our 42nd wedding anniversary, I made a big choice. I decided to change that room into something new. Not to forget Henry. I could never forget him. But to make something that looked forward, not backward. Maybe a room where my grandchildren could play with toys and read books. The workers started 5 days ago. They took out all of Henry's workbooks first and put them in boxes. Then they pulled up the old carpet. Then they took off the old paper on the walls. Carlos promised it would take 3 or 4 weeks. They were supposed to open up the wall behind Henry's big desk today. Something about fixing the electric wires before putting in new shelves. When I turned onto my street, Maple Avenue, I saw both my sons' cars already there. Robert's shiny black car was next to James's old red truck. They were standing near the front door. Even from far away I could see they looked worried and stiff. They hadn't talked much to each other since Henry's funeral. They had a big fight about money from Henry's will. I tried to stay out of it, but it made me so sad. Mom, Robert called out as I got out of my car. He walked fast toward me. He was wearing nice pants and a nice shirt. He's 41 years old now. He looks a lot like his father did. Sharp face and very smart. What's this all about? He asked. I don't know anything more than you do, I told him. I was looking for my keys in my purse. James stayed back with his hands in his pockets. He was wearing old jeans with holes in them. He's 37 years old. He was always the nicer one of my 2 boys. He liked teaching high school kids more than being a lawyer like his dad and brother. But now he looked worried and careful. The front door opened before I could use my key. Carlos stood there. His face looked white like paper. Dirt from sawing wood was all over his shirt. Mrs. Thompson, thank you for coming so fast. His eyes looked at my sons. Both of you came. That's good. What did you find? Robert said in a loud voice. He pushed past Carlos into the house. Carlos looked at me. I saw something in his eyes that made my blood feel cold. He felt sorry for me. And under that, he looked scared. "It's better if you just see it yourself," he said very quietly. We followed him down the hall to Henry's office. The room looked so different and wrong. The carpet was gone. The wallpaper was gone. You could see the bones of the house now. Two of Carlos's workers stood near the far wall. Their faces looked blank, like they were trying not to show feelings. The wall behind Henry's desk was completely gone. Not just opened up. Completely removed. In the space where the wall used to be was a room I never knew was there. Hidden room. It was small. Maybe as big as a child's bedroom. Work lights made it bright so we could see. The walls were plain and gray. They had never been painted. And on those walls were bottles. Hundreds and hundreds of bottles lined up on shelves. The wall was fake, Carlos said. His voice sounded tight and scared. Had 2 layers. We found the crack between them when we were checking for the wood beams inside. There's a secret door here. He pointed to a part of the wall that looked normal but had a hidden button. Your husband built this a long time ago. Maybe 20 or 30 years by the look of it. Really good work. Professional. I walked closer. My heart was beating so hard I thought it might break my ribs. The bottles had labels on them. Each one was organized really carefully. Just like how Henry did everything in his life. I could see his handwriting on the labels. But what was inside the bottles made me stop breathing. Not liquid. Papers. Rolled up papers inside each bottle. Names. So many names written in Henry's neat handwriting on tape stuck to each bottle. Robert pushed past me and grabbed one of the bottles. His face turned white as snow. "What the hell is this?" he said in a whisper. I pulled another bottle from the shelf. It wasn't too hard to open. Inside were photos of a man I didn't know. Copies of bank papers. What looked like spy notes from many years ago. At the top of the first page, in Henry's handwriting, it said, "Person Marcus Johnson. Job finished." Finished. My hand started shaking as I put that bottle down and reached for another one. And another. And another. Each bottle had information about someone. Most were people I'd never heard of. But some names I knew. Our dentist. A lady who used to be on the city council. The man who owned the big store downtown. James's voice sounded like he was choking. He stood in the corner of the hidden room holding a bottle that had no name on it. Just a date written on it. March 2001. He opened it and pictures fell out onto the floor. I bent down to pick them up and the whole world started spinning. The pictures showed a young woman with long red hair going into and out of a hotel. In some pictures she was with a man. Not just any man. My husband. There were receipts for hotel rooms, restaurant bills. All from 6 months in the year 2001. The year Robert finished college. The year we had a big party for our 25th wedding anniversary. The year Henry told me he had to travel all the time for a big work case in another city. "There's more," Carlos said quietly. He pointed to the back of the hidden room where a small safe was built into the wall. We didn't open it. We thought we shouldn't. Robert was already across the room looking at the safe. "Has a number lock. 4 numbers. Mom, do you know Dad's special numbers?" I couldn't talk. Couldn't think. The pictures felt heavy in my hands. Who was this woman? Why did Henry keep these papers hidden for over 20 years? And even more scary, what else was my husband hiding from me? "Try the anniversary date," James said. His voice sounded empty and sad. Robert pushed in the numbers. The safe made a beeping sound and clicked open. Inside was one leather book and a bunch of old videotapes. Each tape had a date on it going back 30 years. But what was on top made Robert step backward. His face looked sick. A gun. And under it, a passport with Henry's picture but a different name on it. "Mom," Robert said slowly. He turned to look at me. What kind of work was Dad really doing? I looked around the hidden room. At all the bottles covering the walls. At the proof of a life I never knew my husband had. Henry Thompson, the man who kissed me goodbye every morning for 40 years, who held my hand through hard times and happy times, had been a stranger. A stranger with secrets that someone wanted to keep buried. Because as Carlos brought us through the house, I noticed something. Small things that might mean nothing by themselves. But together they made a pattern. Scratches around the front door lock that weren't there last week. The light smell of cigarette smoke in the hallway even though nobody in my family smokes. The way the alarm code didn't work when I came 3 days ago. I thought it was just broken. But now, standing in this hidden room full of proof of Henry's secret life, I understood. Someone else knew about this room. Someone who had been looking for something. And they might still be looking. We need to call the police, James said. But Robert shook his head. His lawyer brain was already thinking. And tell them what? That Dad had a hidden room. That's not against the law. The gun probably is, Robert. Virginia says you have to register guns. But that's not exactly Robert. I stopped him. My voice was stronger than I felt. Look at these bottles. Really look at them. What do you see? He pulled another bottle from the shelf and opened it. His eyes read what was inside. I watched him understand. These are blackmail files, he whispered. I nodded slowly. And if your father was keeping them, if he hid them this carefully for this long, there's a reason. What reason? James asked loudly. What could possibly make this okay? The sound of feet on the front porch made him stop talking. We all froze like statues. Someone knocked on the door. Hard and loud like police. Carlos went to the window and looked out. His face got even whiter. There's a federal agent car in your driveway. My heart stopped. I didn't call them. Neither did we, Robert said. Another knock, louder this time. A voice called through the door. Mrs. Thompson, this is Agent David Wilson from the FBI. I need to talk to you about your husband's estate. FBI. Not local police. Federal. I looked at my sons. I could see my own fear in their faces. Whatever Henry had been doing, whatever secrets he kept hidden behind that fake wall, they had just found us. And I had no idea what we'd done to be in danger. Or how to keep my family safe from what was coming next. The agent knocked again. He was waiting. Time felt like it stopped in that hidden room. We were surrounded by proof of a life I never knew about. I was holding pictures of my husband with another woman. A federal officer was at my door asking questions I didn't have answers for. I took a deep breath and started walking toward the front door. Mom, wait, Robert grabbed my arm. We need to think about this first. But I had already decided. Whatever Henry had done, whatever he'd been hiding, I would face it head on. I spent a year crying over a man I thought I knew. Now it was time to find out who he really was. Even if the truth broke everything I believed about my life. Agent David Wilson was younger than I thought he would be. Maybe 50 years old. He had gray hair and eyes that saw everything. He stood on my porch with the calm stillness of someone used to waiting. His badge was clipped to his belt where I could see it clearly. Mrs. Thompson, I'm sorry to bother you on a Sunday, he said. His southern accent made his words softer. I'm following up on some strange things about your late husband's estate paperwork. Can I come in? Behind me I felt Robert get tense. James had gone quiet. Course, I said. I stepped to the side. My voice sounded surprisingly calm even though my heart was trying to break through my chest. Though I'm not sure what strange things you mean. Everything was handled by my husband's law partner, Benjamin Clark. Something quick flashed in Wilson's eyes when I said Benjamin's name. Yes, ma'am. That's actually what I need to talk to you about. He followed me into the living room. His eyes noticed the mess from the renovation. His eyes stayed on the open door to Henry's office. Could tell he knew. He knew about the hidden room. Or he suspected it. Agent, Robert stepped forward and held out his hand like a professional lawyer. I'm Robert Thompson, Mrs. Thompson's oldest son. Maybe you could tell us why you're here. Wilson shook his hand and looked at him carefully. I'm investigating possible financial crimes connected to several estates managed by the Thompson and Clark law firm over the past 15 years. The words dropped like rocks into water. My father's firm. Robert's voice got sharp. That's impossible. Thompson and Clark has a perfect reputation. Had Wilson said quietly. Benjamin Clark disappeared 3 days ago. He took all the money from the firm's trust accounts, about $2.3 million. And he's gone. We've put out a federal warrant for his arrest. The room spun around me. I grabbed the arm of the couch to keep from falling. Benjamin Clark had been Henry's partner for 30 years. He carried Henry's coffin at the funeral. He helped me with all the estate papers. He told me everything was fine and in order. When you say disappeared, James asked slowly, do you mean? I mean his wife came home on Thursday night and found his clothes gone. His computer wiped clean, and a note saying he was sorry. Wilson pulled out a small notebook. Mrs. Thompson, when did you last talk to Mr. Clark? I tried to remember. 3 weeks ago. When I signed the papers to start this renovation. He came here to the house. Did he seem upset? Worried about something? I thought back to that afternoon. Benjamin had seemed normal. Professional and kind. Maybe a little distracted. But there had been something. He asked about Henry's office. Asked if I'd found anything unusual in his papers. Wilson's eyes got sharp. And had you? Robert gave me a warning look. But I was tired of secrets and lies. No, I hadn't been in the office since Henry died. Not until the renovation started. That was sort of true. I hadn't found anything. The workers had. Mrs. Thompson, I need to ask you something directly. Wilson leaned forward. His face was serious. Did you know your husband kept files on different people? Personal information, bank records, the kind of papers that might be used for blackmail. Agent Wilson, I think before my mother answers more questions, Robert interrupted coldly. We should figure out if she needs a lawyer. I'm not investigating your mother, Wilson said. But I am investigating what your father and Benjamin Clark were doing with those files. And why Clark ran away the moment he heard about this renovation. The pieces clicked together in my mind. It was terrible and clear. He knew about the hidden room, I said. We think so, Wilson answered. We also think he was scared of what you might find there. So he knew about the room. And when your husband died, someone else wanted those files I finished for him. Wilson nodded. We think Benjamin was being threatened. Maybe someone said they would hurt him. And instead of facing what was coming, he took the money and ran. Leaving my mother to deal with it, Robert said bitterly. Leaving all of us, James corrected him. He'd been quiet until now, but his face was white as paper. If Dad was blackmailing people, we don't know that's what he was doing, I said sharply. But even as I said it, I knew it sounded fake. What else could those files be for? Wilson turned back to face us. I need to see that room. Whatever your husband was hiding, it might be evidence in a federal investigation. And it might help us find Benjamin Clark before he stopped talking. Before what? Yes. Before whoever he's running from catches up to him, Wilson said. Cold feeling ran down my back. You think he's in danger? I think everyone connected to those files is in danger, Mrs. Thompson. Including you and your sons. The heavy weight of his words settled over us like a dark cloud. Carlos appeared in the doorway looking unsure. Ma'am, should my workers leave? Yes, Wilson said before I could answer. I need this to be an official crime scene. No people who aren't authorized. As Carlos and his workers left, I watched my peaceful Sunday morning turn into a nightmare. Federal investigation. Missing partner. Hidden files. Danger. And under it all, the question that kept bothering me. Who had Henry really been? After Carlos left, Wilson spent 2 hours in the hidden room. He took pictures of everything. He wrote notes. Sometimes he asked questions I couldn't answer. Who were these people? When did Henry make these files? Did I recognize any of the names? I recognized 3 names. Thomas Bradley, who was our town mayor 10 years ago. Linda Hayes, the principal at the high school where James teaches. And Police Chief Martin Foster, who just retired after 30 years. All 3 had been friends. People we ate dinner with. People we celebrated holidays with. All 3 had files showing secrets that could destroy their lives. Mom, you need to see this. James stood in the door of the hidden room holding the leather book we found in the safe. His hands were shaking a little bit. It's Dad's handwriting. It's like a record book. Wilson took the book and flipped through pages full of Henry's careful writing. Dates, names, amounts of money. Payments received. Services given. The cold language of business deals. Your father was running a protection business, Wilson said finally. People paid him to keep their secrets safe. A lot of money based on these numbers. That's not possible, I whispered. But I was staring at entries going back decades. Thousands of dollars. Tens of thousands. All written down so carefully. Robert grabbed the book from Wilson's hands. His face was red with anger. This doesn't prove anything. These could be normal legal fees for cases that were never filed with the court. Mr. Thompson, Wilson's voice was gentle but firm. I've already checked some of these names against public records. Your father wasn't representing these people in court. He was collecting money to keep quiet about information he'd found. Then he was a criminal, Robert said flatly. Or he was protecting people, I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. What if these weren't victims? What if they came to him and asked for help? And he just managed the situation. Wilson looked at me with new interest. That's an interesting way to see it, Mrs. Thompson. Is that what you believe? I didn't know what I believed anymore. But I knew Henry. I knew the man who gave money to the hospital every year. Who helped young lawyers learn. Who held me when my mother died and told me it would all be okay. That man couldn't have been just a blackmailer, could he? I believe my husband was complicated, I said carefully. And I believe there's more to this story than we understand yet. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from a number I didn't know. Stop looking. Some secret should stay buried. I showed it to Wilson. His face got hard. When did you get this? Just now. He pulled out his own phone and made a call. I need a phone trace and security guards at 428 Maple Avenue right away. Security guards. The words made it real. We were in real danger. Not danger that might happen later. Danger right now. Agent, I said slowly, if someone knows we found this room, knows we're looking through these files, why tell us to stop? Why not just take what they want? Wilson finished my thought. Because they don't know what you found yet. They're trying to scare you into walking away before you find something specific. Find what? James asked loudly. That's what we need to figure out, Wilson said. He closed the book carefully. Mrs. Thompson, I need you and your sons to come to the federal building tomorrow morning. We'll need complete statements from all of you. And we need to get these files somewhere safe before the sound of breaking glass cut him off. Everyone froze. A brick crashed through the living room window. It was wrapped in paper. Wilson had his gun out before the bricks stopped rolling. Everyone get down. Get away from the windows. Robert pushed me behind the couch. James got down beside us. Through the broken window I heard a car engine start really loud. Tires squealed as someone drove away fast down Maple Avenue. Wilson spoke fast into his radio. He was calling for backup and giving descriptions I couldn't understand through the ringing in my ears. When he was sure the danger was gone, he picked up the brick with special gloves. He unwrapped the paper carefully. What does it say? He asked. His face looked grim. It's a list of names. 23 of them. He looked at me. Including you and your sons. The paper moved in his hand as he held it up. At the bottom, written in red marker, everyone who knows pays the price. We're taking you into protective custody, Wilson said. All 3 of you. Right now. Wait, I stood up. Robert tried to stop me but I ignored him. I need something from the hidden room first. Mrs. Thompson, Wilson started to say. 1 minute, I said. Please. Wilson waited then nodded. Make it fast. I walked into Henry's destroyed office. Into that secret room that had turned my whole life upside down. The bottles lined the walls. So many lives written down. So many secrets kept safe. But I wasn't looking at the bottles. I was looking at the videotapes. The dates on them went back many years. But one caught my eye. October 12, 1988. The day we moved into this house. The day Henry said he had to set up his office first before we even unpacked the kitchen boxes. The day he worked late into the night by himself. Grabbed 3 tapes. That one and two others from important times in our marriage. Times when Henry had been distant and busy and secretive. "Mom, we need to go," Robert called from the hall. I put the tapes in my sweater pockets and went back to find my sons being rushed toward the door by federal agents who got there really fast. As I walked out into the cool afternoon air, I looked back at my house. The home where I raised my kids. Where I built a life with a man I thought I knew. Someone had threatened my family. Someone wanted these secrets to stay hidden badly enough to throw a brick through my window. But they made a mistake. They thought I would run away and hide. That I would let federal agents take over while I shook with fear. They didn't know that I spent 40 years married to a man who kept secrets. I learned a few things about being patient. About watching carefully. About waiting for the right time to act. And I learned that the most dangerous person in any room is the one everyone thinks is weak. The 63-year-old widow. The sad wife. The confused, helpless woman who needed protection. Let them think that. Let them believe I was fragile and scared and didn't know what to do. While they watched for the shield, they wouldn't see the sword. I got in the back of the federal car. The videotapes felt heavy in my pockets. And I started making a plan. The safe house was a plain ranch house in the next county over. 40 minutes from our town. Tan siding, brown shutters, grass that needed cutting. The kind of place you'd drive past and never remember. Perfect hiding for people who needed to disappear. "You'll stay here until we figure out how dangerous this is," Wilson explained as he brought us inside. The inside was as plain as the outside. Basic government furniture. Walls. The smell of cleaning chemicals. "We have agents outside watching. Nobody gets in or out without permission." Robert immediately started making phone calls. To his office, his wife, anyone who would listen to him complain about how this was messing up his schedule. James sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing. His face was still pale from shock. I went to the bathroom, locked the door and pulled out the videotapes. 3 tapes from 3 different times in our marriage. But no way to watch them. I doubted the safe house had a machine to play old videotapes. A soft knock stopped my thoughts. "Mom." James's voice sounded worried. "You okay?" I put the tapes back in my pockets and opened the door. "I'm fine, sweetheart." He looked at me with worry that made my heart hurt. Of my 2 sons, James had always been better at noticing when something was wrong. "This is crazy," he said. "All of it. Dad couldn't have been what they're saying." "I know," I said. I squeezed his hand. "But we need to understand what really happened before we can defend him." "Files, Mom. All those people." What if James stopped and struggled with the words? What if Dad hurt people? What if he ruined their lives? It was the question I'd been avoiding. "Then we deal with the truth, whatever it is," I said. But even as I said it, doubt was eating at me. Henry had been many things. But mean and destructive. I couldn't make that match with the man who read bedtime stories to our sons. Who held my hand at my father's funeral. Who kissed my forehead every morning before work. Unless I never really knew him at all. That evening, while Robert argued with his wife Sarah on the phone in the bedroom, and James fell asleep on the couch, I noticed something strange. The agent by the front door, a young woman named Martinez, kept checking her phone. Not in a normal way. In a worried, nervous way. And when Wilson went outside to take a call, I saw Martinez follow him. Through the window I watched them have an angry conversation. Wilson's body looked aggressive and territorial. Martinez looked defensive, like she was protecting herself. They were arguing about us. About the case. When Wilson came back inside, his face looked carefully blank. But I'd spent 40 years reading people's faces at dinner parties and business meetings. Something had changed. "Mrs. Thompson, I need to ask you some questions about your husband's partnership with Benjamin Clark." He sat across from me at the kitchen table and pulled out his notebook. "How much did you know about their business arrangement?" I knew they were partners. Equal shares in the firm. Henry did most of the court work. Benjamin managed estates and contracts. "Did you know Benjamin was married before? That his first wife died in a car crash in 1999? The question seemed to come from nowhere. Yes, I knew. It was so sad. She was only 32 years old. Wilson's pen stopped on the page. Did your husband ever say anything unusual about that crash? A cold feeling spread through my chest. What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm asking if Henry ever said the crash might not have been. He chose his words carefully, an accident. Absolutely not. But even as I said it, I remembered something. A conversation years ago after a firm dinner. Henry and I were driving home and he said something odd about Benjamin. He's stuck now. No way out. I thought he meant stuck in grief. Stuck missing his wife. What if he meant something else completely? Agent Wilson, I said slowly, what did you find in those files about Benjamin's wife? He closed his notebook. That's part of an ongoing investigation. Can't say. You think my husband knew something about her death? You think he used it to control Benjamin? The pieces were putting themselves together in my mind. It was terrible and clear. All these years, Benjamin wasn't just Henry's partner. He was what? Another victim. Another person Henry had power over. I think your husband was very good at collecting insurance policies, Wilson said quietly. Information he could use if he ever needed control over someone. And I think Benjamin Clark finally decided he'd had enough. My phone buzzed. Another text from the same unknown number. Ask Wilson about his brother. I showed him the screen and watched the color leave his face. Who sent this? His voice was tight and angry. The same number as before. What does it mean? What about your brother? Wilson stood up fast and walked to the window. When he talked again, his voice was rough and hurt. My brother killed himself 8 years ago. He was a banker in another city. Got caught up in some kind of money scandal. Lost everything. He turned to face me. Your husband's firm handled the investigation. The meaning hung in the air between us like smoke. You think Henry, I started to say. I think my brother's name was in one of those files, Wilson said. And I think whatever information your husband had made my brother so scared and sad that he shot himself. The room tilted and spun. This wasn't just about investigating Henry's crimes. This was personal. Wilson had his own reasons for wanting to know the truth. Does your boss know? I asked carefully. Know what? That I asked for this case. That I've been waiting 8 years to find out what your husband knew about my brother's death. His laugh was bitter and sad. I'm the best person for this case, Mrs. Thompson. Because I understand exactly what kind of man Henry Thompson was. Then you can't be fair, Robert said. He was standing in the hall. His face was hard. You can't investigate without bias. You need to remove yourself from this case. I need to find Benjamin Clark before he disappears with evidence that could answer 8 years of questions. Wilson shot back. And I need to figure out who else wants those files badly enough to threaten your family. So unless you want to file an official complaint and wait for a new team to catch up, which could take weeks, I think we should keep working together. Robert looked at me. I saw him thinking like a lawyer, weighing the risks and benefits. We continue, I said quietly. But Agent Wilson, you need to be honest with us. All of us. No more secrets. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. Then here's the truth. We found something else in the files. A list of dates and places. Meeting spots, we think. Where your husband collected money from people. The last entry is dated 3 weeks before he died. The place is the old paper mill out past Route 29. That place has been empty for years, James said. Exactly. Private. No one around to see anything. Wilson pulled out his phone and showed us a picture. We sent a team there this afternoon. Found this in the main building. The picture showed a room set up like an office. Desk, filing cabinet, laptop, computer. But everything was destroyed. Papers everywhere. Drawers ripped out. The laptop was smashed into pieces. Someone got there first, I said quietly. 2 days ago from what we can tell, Wilson said. Right around the time Benjamin Clark disappeared. He swiped to another photo. We also found this. A message spray painted on the wall in red letters. The accountant knows. What accountant? Robert demanded. That's what we need to find out. Wilson's phone rang. He stepped away to answer it. His voice dropped to a whisper I couldn't hear. I pulled out my own phone and opened the text message again. Ask Wilson about his brother. Someone wanted me to know the agent was personally involved. Someone wanted to create distrust and fighting. But why? Unless they needed us fighting with each other instead of looking too closely at the evidence. I stood up and walked to the kitchen window. The safe house had woods behind it. It was dark now as the sun went down. Movement caught my eye. Person standing at the edge of the trees. Too far away to see clearly. But standing there, watching us. Agent Wilson, I called quietly. We have company. Wilson was next to me in seconds. His gun was out. He spoke into his radio. Someone's out there. Northeast corner. Move in but don't attack until we know who it is. The lights went out. Complete darkness everywhere. Robert swore loudly. James called out for me. Wilson was shouting orders into his radio. And then I heard it. The soft click of the back door opening. Someone was inside the house. Everyone get down. Wilson's voice cut through the noise and fear. Federal agent. Show yourself. Silence. Then footsteps. Slow and calm. Walking across the kitchen floor. Flashlight beam cut through the dark. It was blinding. When my eyes got used to it, I saw someone standing in the doorway. They were wearing one of the agent's jackets and holding Martinez's badge like they belonged there. It was a man around 60 years old. Well dressed. He looked familiar. Took me a second to figure out why. 'Cause he was so out of place here. Dr. Philip Hayes. Our family doctor for 20 years. Hello, Margaret, he said calmly. Like he just came over for Sunday dinner. I think it's time we talked about what your husband really knew. Wilson's gun was pointed right at him. Don't move. Put your hands where I can see them. Dr. Hayes raised his hands slowly. But his face stayed calm and peaceful. Agent David Wilson. I wondered when we would meet. Your brother talked about you a lot before the end. Wilson's hand shook. You knew my brother Andrew. I was his doctor. Treated his depression after the scandal. Gave him the pills he used to, well, you know the rest. Hayes's smile was terrible and frightening. Henry documented all of it. Every prescription. Every session. Every moment of your brother's pain. He kept perfect records. You evil. Wilson started to move forward, but Robert grabbed him and held him back. Easy, Agent, Hayes said. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here because Margaret needs to understand something important. He looked right at me. Your husband didn't start collecting secrets because he was greedy or mean. He started because he was protecting someone. And when he died, that protection ended. Protecting who? Yes. My voice was loud. You, Margaret. Everything Henry did. Every file. Every secret. Every terrible choice. He did it all to protect you. The words made no sense at all. Protect me from what? Hayes's face softened with something like pity. From the truth about your past. About who you really are. The floor felt like it was dropping away under my feet. What are you talking about? Your name before you got married was Margaret Elizabeth Cooper, right? You grew up in Charleston. Only child of William and Susan Cooper. Yes, I whispered. Though suddenly I wasn't sure about anything anymore. Except that's not true. None of it is true. Hayes pulled a bottle from his jacket. I recognized it immediately as one of Henry's bottles. Henry spent 30 years keeping this hidden. But now that he's gone, the people who wanted it buried have come looking. And they will hurt anyone who gets in their way. He threw the bottle onto the kitchen table. In the flashlight I could see my name written on it. My bottle. Henry had kept a bottle with my name on it. Open it, Hayes said. Before anyone else dies. You need to know what your husband gave up everything to protect. My hands shook as I reached for the bottle. Robert and James crowded close to me. Wilson kept his gun pointed at Hayes, but his eyes were on the bottle too. I opened it and pulled out the papers. The first paper was a birth certificate. Not mine. I'd seen my birth certificate hundreds of times. This one had a different name. Emma Patterson. Born April 18, 1962 in Detroit, Michigan. My birthday. My exact birth date. But not my name. I don't understand, I said. My voice was barely a whisper. Keep reading, Hayes said softly. Newspaper articles from 1967. A house fire in Detroit. 2 people dead. Michael and Patricia Norton. 1 survivor. Their 5-year-old daughter Emma. Pictures of a little girl with dark hair and serious eyes. She looked familiar in a way that made my skin crawl with fear. She looked like me. No, I said. It's a mistake. My parents were William and Susan Cooper. I grew up in Charleston. I remember my childhood. You remember what you were told to remember, Hayes said. What the Coopers taught you to believe. They adopted you after the fire, Margaret. They changed your name, your history, your whole identity. And they did it because someone very powerful wanted you to disappear. Ooh, James demanded. Why would anyone want a 5-year-old to disappear? Because of what your mother saw the night of that fire, Hayes said. His voice was serious and dark. Because at 5 years old, Margaret or Emma was the only person who saw a murder happen. The room spun around me. I grabbed the table edge and fought to breathe. This couldn't be real. Couldn't be true. But the pictures, the birth certificate, the dates that matched up perfectly with my life, just told as someone else's story. Henry found out, I whispered. Somehow he found out who I really was. When you were engaged to be married, Hayes said. He was checking your background for the wedding announcement in the newspaper. Found something wrong in your adoption records. Started digging. And what he found? He shook his head sadly. The people who killed your birth parents. Who wanted you dead too. They were connected. They had power. Henry realized that if anyone found out you were still alive, still a possible witness, they would come to kill her, Robert finished. His voice was empty. So he built the whole thing, Wilson said slowly. Collected secrets. Made himself powerful. Made himself untouchable. All to keep people from looking too closely at his wife's past. For 40 years, Hayes agreed. He blackmailed people. He manipulated them. He destroyed lives. All to keep Margaret safe. And it worked. Until Benjamin Clark figured out what the files really were. Until he understood that with Henry gone, there was no one to keep the balance. No one to keep the bad people away. That's why he ran, I said quietly. He knew they would come looking. And they have, Hayes said. His voice got urgent and scared. Margaret, the person who set that fire. Who killed your parents. They're still alive. Still powerful. And they know you found the files. They know you're looking for answers. Who is it? I demanded. Tell me who I should be afraid of. I can't tell you. Henry never told me the name. It was his final protection. His last piece of insurance. But it's someone in this town. Someone you know. Someone who's been watching you for 40 years. Waiting to see if you would ever remember what you saw. The lights came back on. Martinez stumbled through the back door. Blood was running from a cut on her head. Someone attacked me, she said. Hit me from behind. More agents rushed in with guns drawn. In all the confusion, I saw Hayes move toward the door. Wait, I grabbed his arm. The files. Do they say who it was? Henry hid the final answer somewhere only you would find it, Hayes said. His voice was urgent and rushed. He told me once that if anything happened to him, you would figure it out. That you were smarter than anyone thought. Then he was gone. He disappeared into the chaos as agents worked to secure the safe house. I stood there holding papers that proved my whole life was a lie. That the parents I mourned, the childhood I remembered, the person I thought I was, none of it was real. I was Emma Patterson. Witness to a murder. Target of a killer who waited 40 years to finish the job. And somewhere in the evidence Henry spent his whole life collecting, hidden in the secrets he protected so hard, was the answer to who wanted me dead. I just had to find it before they found me. They moved us to a new place before the sun came up. A hotel near the federal building in the city. With agents on our floor and in the lobby. Wilson had been replaced by a senior agent named Patricia Ramos. A stern woman in her 50s who made it clear she didn't like the problems we brought to her area. Dr. Hayes's disappearance is now part of the investigation, She told us over coffee in her temporary office. A hotel room turned into a command center. We've put out a warrant for his arrest. But he seems to have vanished just as completely as Benjamin Clark. They're working together, I said. It was the only thing that made sense. Ramos's face suggested she'd reached the same conclusion. What we need to understand is why. What are they trying to do? I'd spent the sleepless night putting together pieces of memory, testing them against this new reality. Emma Patterson. The name felt strange and foreign, like wearing someone else's clothes. But there were moments, flashes of things I'd always thought were just childhood dreams. Things that suddenly made sense. House with a red door. The smell of smoke. A woman screaming. Running through darkness while someone called a name that wasn't Margaret. Emma. They'd been calling for Emma. Mom, you need to rest, James said. He sat next to me on the hotel couch. His face was worried. You haven't slept at all. I can't sleep, I said. I showed him the papers again. The birth certificate that proved I was someone else. James, if this is true, if I saw a murder happen, I might remember something. Something that could tell us who did it. Or you might get hurt all over again by the memories, he said gently. Let the professionals handle this. But the professionals had let Dr. Hayes walk into a federal safe house and walk right back out. They'd lost Benjamin Clark and $2.3 million. They were looking for answers in Henry's files while the real answer was locked somewhere in my broken memory. Robert paced by the window. He'd been on phone calls all morning. To Sarah, to his office, to the family lawyer. When he finally hung up, his face looked sick. We have a problem. Big one. Ramos looked up from her laptop. What kind of problem? Sarah's father is Thomas Bradley, the former mayor. The one who has a file in Dad's collection. Robert's voice was tight. She just told me her family is suing Mom for lies and emotional pain. They're saying Dad's files have false information meant to hurt her father's reputation. That's crazy, James said. They can't sue Mom for something Dad did. They can and they are, Robert said. And Sarah is standing with them. She wants me to choose. Her family or mine. The hurt in his eyes cut me deeper than any knife. His wife. The woman he'd built a life with. She was turning this investigation into a weapon against us. Thomas Bradley, I said slowly, pulling the name from memory. He was mayor from 2009 to 2015. Henry and I went to several parties at his house. He has a daughter about your age, Robert. And a son. Philip, Ramos finished. She was looking at her computer. Dr. Philip Hayes. Who just happens to be your family doctor and the person who broke into the safe house last night. The connections put themselves together like a spider's web. Thomas Bradley, caught by whatever Henry had found. His son Philip, somehow involved in covering up the truth about who I really was. Both of them connected to a murder 40 years old. We need to see Thomas Bradley's file, I said. Ramos shook her head. It's evidence in a federal investigation. I can't just hand it over. My family is being sued. My son's marriage is falling apart. Someone is trying to kill me. I stood up. I fought to keep my voice steady. I have a right to know what's in that file. After a long moment, Ramos pulled out her phone and made a call. 10 minutes later, an agent came with a copy of Thomas Bradley's file. It was thicker than most of the others. Inside were pictures from the 1980s. Bank records. Copies of sealed court papers. But it was the newspaper article that made my blood run cold. Detroit News, November 20, 1967. Investigation continues in Norton House fire. The Bradley family lived in Detroit, I whispered. In 1967. Ramos was already typing. Pulling up records. Thomas Bradley, born 1960 in Detroit. Family moved to Virginia in 1968. 1 year after the Norton fire. She looked up. His father was a fire inspector. I finished her sentence. The memory was coming back like something rising from deep water. Remember. There was a man who came to our house. The Norton house. He wore a uniform. He argued with my father about something important. The pieces were coming together into a picture I didn't want to see. A fire inspector's family. Convenient house fire. A 5-year-old witness who disappeared into foster care. Given a new name. Moved to a new place. Her whole identity erased. Bradley's father was corrupt, Ramos said. She was reading from her screen. Henry's file documents bribes. Evidence tampering. A pattern of saying fires were accidents when he was paid enough money. He died in 1999. But his son took over his secrets, I said. And when Thomas ran for mayor, Henry had everything he needed to control him. Why would your husband protect the man whose father helped cover up your parents' murder? James asked. It was the question I'd been avoiding. But the answer was becoming clear to me now. Because Henry didn't just want justice. He wanted insurance. He wanted to make sure the people involved had too much to lose if they came after me. Dad built a whole criminal empire just to keep you safe, Robert said. His face was white. And now it's falling apart. Everyone he controlled. Everyone who had something to lose. They're all fighting to protect themselves. By getting rid of the witness, Ramos said quietly. By getting rid of you. My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Your sons will pay for your husband's sins. Starting with Robert's reputation. Before I could show it to Ramos, Robert's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went white as snow. That was my boss. Someone leaked secret client information to the newspapers. Information that was on my work computer. They're saying I broke lawyer rules. His voice was hollow and dead. They're opening an investigation. I could lose my license to practice law. It's getting worse, Ramos said. They're not just threatening anymore. They're actively destroying your family, your reputation, your money, your ability to fight back. James's phone buzzed next. He read the message and I watched all color drain from his face. It's the school board. They're suspending me. While they investigate, he stopped. He showed me the screen. Claims of inappropriate behavior with students. That's insane, I said loudly. James, you're the most honest teacher in that school. It doesn't matter, he said. His hand shook. Once someone says something like this, it follows you forever. Even if they prove it's not true. They were destroying my sons one by one. Taking apart their careers, their reputations, their lives. And they were doing it because I dared to look for the truth. We need to go public, Robert said suddenly. Release all the files. If everyone's secrets are out there, then everyone has a reason to keep us quiet permanently, Ramos interrupted. Well, we need to identify who's behind this and build a case that will hold up in court. While my family gets destroyed. Robert's voice got loud. While my marriage falls apart and my brother loses his job. While we keep you alive, Ramos shot back. That's what matters most right now. But I was thinking about something Dr. Hayes had said. Henry hid the final answer somewhere only you would find it. The videotapes. They were still in my overnight bag. Taken as evidence. But written down and stored somewhere. I stood up. The argument stopped. Agent Ramos, I need to see evidence. 3 videotapes from my husband's safe. She frowned. Why would you need those? Because my husband wrote everything down. If there's an answer, it might be on those tapes. 20 minutes later, we were in a federal building meeting room. We had a really old VCR player that looked like it belonged in a museum. Ramos, 2 other agents, my sons, and I all gathered around as I put in the first tape. The one dated October 12, 1988. The day we moved into our house. The screen flickered and came to life. Henry appeared. He looked younger. His hair wasn't gray yet. He sat in what I recognized as his office. Before the fake wall. Before the hidden room. Margaret, his recorded voice said. If you're watching this, then I'm gone. And you found the room. Which means the protection I built has failed. My throat got tight. James grabbed my hand and held it. I want you to know that everything I did for you. When I found out who you really were. What you saw happen. Henry stopped talking. He took a deep breath. Had a choice. Tell you the truth and watch you live in fear every day. Or keep the secret and make sure no one could ever hurt you. He chose the lie, Robert whispered. I chose you, Henry's voice continued, like he was answering Robert. And I would make the same choice again. But if you're watching this, things have changed. The people involved have made a move. So you need to know everything. The camera moved. Henry held up a picture. I recognized it right away. One from my file. The Norton house before the fire. Your father, Michael Norton, was an accountant. He found fraud at his company. Huge amounts of money being stolen. Money laundering. Connections to organized crime. He wrote it all down. Planned to tell the police. Henry's face was serious and sad. They killed him before he could. Made it look like an accident. Gas leak. House fire. But you survived, Emma. You ran away. The name sent shivers through my whole body. Emma. I had been Emma. The man who ordered the killing was named Vincent Romano. Mid-level crime boss. Detroit operation. He's dead now. Died in prison in 1998. But his organization survived. And the person who actually set the fire. Who made sure your parents couldn't escape. Henry leaned closer to the camera. That was never proven. The investigation was ruined by the Bradley family's fire inspector father. The evidence was destroyed. Then how do we find them? Asked the screen. I knew he couldn't answer. But Henry smiled like he knew I would ask that. I spent 30 years following the money, he said. Romano's organization had connections in Virginia. When his empire fell, his people scattered. Some went straight, changed their names, built new lives, got into politics, business, medicine. I thought of Dr. Philip Hayes. Of his father Thomas. I wrote down everyone with connections to the original crime. Henry continued. Everyone who might have been involved. It's all in the files. But the person who actually killed your parents, who tried to kill you, I never found solid proof. Until 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks before he died. Got a phone call. Anonymous. Someone who said they knew what happened that night. They wanted to meet. To make a deal. They said they had evidence. And they were willing to trade it for freedom from the control I had over them. It was a trap, Ramos said quietly. I went to the meeting, Henry said on the screen. At the old paper mill. And I recorded everything. If you're watching this tape, Margaret, you need to find the other tapes. They're hidden in places that mean something to us. Places only you would think to look. The screen went black. We all sat in silence. Finally James spoke. Dad was trying to make a deal with someone he was blackmailing. Someone he had control over. Someone who knew about the Norton murders, Robert added. And someone who killed him for it, I said quietly. I thought about the recording. The meeting at the paper mill. The destroyed office we'd found there. Henry made a recording of that meeting, I said. It would be proof of who killed my parents. Maybe even proof of who killed him. And it's on one of the other tapes, Ramos understood. Or hidden somewhere else that the killer hasn't found yet. My phone buzzed. The unknown number again. Found the mill. Found the office. Looking for the house next. Hope your sons survive what we find. The threat was crystal clear. They were going to my house. Where Carlos's workers had torn down walls. Exposed the hidden room. Disturbed evidence. Where they might find whatever Henry had hidden there. We need to get back to town, I said. I stood up. Right now. Absolutely not, Ramos said. Too dangerous. We'll send a team. They won't know what to look for, I said. Henry said he hid things in places that meant something to us. To our marriage. Our life together. I grabbed my coat. I'm the only one who can find it. Then I'm coming with you, Robert said. Me too, James said. Ramos looked like she wanted to argue. Then she sighed. Fine. But we do this my way. Full team of agents. Armored cars. And at the first sign of trouble, we leave immediately. Agreed. He nodded. But I was already thinking ahead. Henry had left me a trail. Clues hidden in our shared history. In the life we built together. He trusted that I would be smart enough. Observant enough. To find what he left behind. Everyone else saw me as a 63-year-old widow. Fragile. Confused. Needing protection. Henry had known better. He'd spent 40 years watching me handle social situations, manage a home, raise 2 smart sons. He'd seen the strength under the polite exterior. And he'd bet everything, his reputation, his life's work, the truth about my past, that I would be able to finish what he started. As we got ready to go back to town, to walk back into danger, I felt something change inside me. Fear was still there, yes. But underneath it was something stronger. Determination. Someone had killed my birth parents. Someone had spent 40 years trying to keep me silent. Someone had murdered my husband to protect their secrets. And now they threatened my sons. That was their mistake. Because a mother protecting her children is the most dangerous force in the world. They were about to learn that the hard way. We got to my house just as the sun was setting. A line of federal cars rolling up Maple Avenue like an army. The neighbors' curtains moved as they watched. Mrs. Jenkins from next door stood on her porch with her arms crossed, watching with obvious curiosity. The house looked wrong in the fading light. Yellow police tape still hung across the door from when the brick came through the window. Carlos's truck was gone, but his equipment was still scattered across the lawn. The horses. A pile of drywall getting wet from the evening dew. Check the area first, Ramos ordered her team. 6 agents spread out. They checked the backyard, the garage, the dark spaces between houses where danger might hide. I stood on the sidewalk with my keys in my hand. I tried to think like Henry. Where would he hide something precious? Something that could only be found by someone who knew our history. Our private moments together. Mom, James said quietly. The garden. I turned to look at him. He was staring at the flower garden in the backyard. You could barely see it in the gathering dark. What about it? Remember when I was 8? I planted those roses with Dad. We spent a whole weekend digging and planting. James's eyes met mine. He made me promise never to dig them up. Said it was important to keep some things exactly as they were planted. My heart started racing. The rose garden. We'd kept it the same even after the boys grew up. Even though it needed work. Henry had insisted on maintaining it. Replacing plants when they died. Keeping it just like it was. Ramos, I called. We need to check the rose garden. She looked doubtful but nodded. Chin Santos, you're with Mrs. Thompson. Everyone else keep your positions. The backyard was full of shadows and darkness. The rose garden was at the far corner, near the old oak tree. Agent Chen went first with a flashlight cutting through the dark. It's clear, he called. Just the roses and wait. There's something here. My hands shook as I walked over. The rose garden was exactly as I remembered. 6 rose bushes planted in a circle. The dirt around them was soft and recently turned. But Chan was pointing to the center of the circle where one stone had been moved aside. Under was a metal box. I pulled it out with shaking hands. The lock was simple. Made to keep out curious kids, not determined adults. I broke it open with a rock from the garden. Inside was another videotape. This one labeled with a date from 3 weeks before Henry died. And under it, a folder marked final proof. We need to watch this, I said. Back in the house with agents at every door, we gathered again around the old VCR. Robert and James stood on either side of me. Ramos stood behind us. Her hand was always near her gun. Put in the tape. The picture was grainy. Shot from a camera that wasn't moving. The place was the paper mill office. I recognized the desk and filing cabinet before they got destroyed. Henry sat facing the camera. This is being recorded on November 3rd, he said. His voice was steady but his skin looked pale. I'm meeting with someone who says they have information about the Norton murders. Someone I've had control over for 15 years through blackmail. The door in the background opened. Person came in. Their face was in shadow at first. Then they stepped into the light. He gasped out loud. Linda Hayes, the high school principal. James's boss. Thank you for coming, Henry said on the screen. Let's just get this over with, Linda said. Her voice was tight with fear and anger. She sat across from him. Her face was hard and set. You said you'd destroy the files if I told you what I know about Detroit. If the information is real, yes, Henry said. I'll destroy everything I have on your theft from the school district. James made a choking sound next to me. She'd been stealing from the school for 5 years. Henry continued on screen. But that's not why we're here. You grew up in Detroit. Your father worked for Vincent Romano's crime organization. Linda's jaw got tight. He was a driver. Low-level nobody. He got out before the arrests. But not before he took part in certain jobs. Including the Norton fire. The room felt like it froze. On screen, Linda went very still. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Your father drove the getaway car that night. He was the driver for the person who set the fire. And you know who that person was. Because your father told you on his deathbed 5 years ago. He confessed everything to you. Linda's hands made fists. You can't prove any of this. I can prove your father's connection to Romano. I can prove he was in Detroit the night of the fire. And I can prove you've been paying money to someone for 15 years. Someone you're terrified of. Someone you're protecting. Henry leaned forward. Tell me who killed the Nortons, Linda. Tell me who tried to kill my wife when she was 5 years old. The silence went on and on. Then Linda laughed. But it was a broken, terrible sound. You don't understand what you're asking. If I tell you, they'll kill me. They've killed before. They killed Eddie Clark 2 days ago. My blood went cold. Eddie Clark. Benjamin's son. He'd been found dead last week. The police said it was suicide. Eddie knew. Ramos breathed. On the screen, Henry had gone pale. Eddie is dead. They made it look like a drug overdose, Linda said. But he knew too much. His father told him everything before he ran away. And now they're cleaning up all the loose ends. Getting rid of anyone who knows. Linda stood up and started pacing. You want a name. Fine. But it won't save you. Won't save any of us. She moved closer to the camera. Her face filled the screen. The person who set the Norton fire was a Bradley. But not Thomas. His older brother Daniel. He was 17 years old. Working for Romano's crew. Trying to prove himself. He set the fire. He made sure the Nortons couldn't escape. And then he panicked. Because there was a witness. A little girl who ran away and hid. My chest got tight. I couldn't breathe at all. Daniel Bradley spent 40 years wondering if that little girl would remember him. Would recognize his face. When his father got the fire inspector job in Virginia and helped cover everything up. When Thomas got into politics and had power. They all had something to lose if the truth came out. Linda's eyes looked wet with tears. But Daniel had the most to lose. Because he didn't just kill the Nortons. He enjoyed it. And he kept killing. What do you mean? Henry asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Daniel Bradley has killed 6 people over the past 40 years. Made them all look like accidents. Natural causes. Anyone who got too close to the truth. Anyone who might expose him. She looked right into the camera. And now he knows about you. About your wife. About these files. Tape went quiet. Then Henry spoke again. His voice was steady despite the fear in his eyes. Where is Daniel Bradley now? Linda smiled. But it was a terrible, frightening smile. That's the thing, Henry. You already know him. You've known him for 20 years. You just never knew who he really was. The screen went black. We all sat in shocked silence. Then Ramos was on her phone. She was barking orders. I need everything we have on Daniel Bradley. Family records. Fake names. Work history. Everything. He changed his identity, I said. My voice sounded numb and far away. Just like I did. He became someone else. Someone local, Robert said. Someone we know well. James was staring at nothing. His face was white as paper. Principal Hayes has been dead for 3 days. They found her Monday morning. Carbon monoxide in her garage. Another accident, Ramos said. Her voice was grim. Just like Eddie Clark. Just like I stopped. Just like Henry, I finished. The pieces were falling into place. It was horrible and clear. His heart attack. What if it wasn't natural? What if someone made it happen? Ramos's face showed she'd been thinking the same thing. We need to find Daniel Bradley now. Before he kills again. The doorbell rang. Everyone froze like statues. Ramos signaled to her agents. They pulled out their guns. Through the window I could see a person on the porch. Alone. No weapons that I could see. Mrs. Thompson, a familiar voice called through the door. It's Chief Foster. The emergency dispatcher told me the FBI was back at your house. Figured I'd better come check on you and make sure you're okay. Martin Foster. Retired police chief. Friend of 30 years. The man who'd hugged me at Henry's funeral. Who'd promised to watch out for me and protect me. The man who had a file in Henry's hidden room. Ramos moved to the door and looked through the peephole. He's alone. No weapons I can see. Don't open it, I said suddenly. Something was wrong. Something about the voice. Timing. The way he showed up exactly when we discovered the truth. But Ramos was already opening the door. Her gun was pointed at Foster. Chief, I need you to show me some ID. Martin Foster stepped into the light. He looked exactly like he always had. Silver hair. Weathered lined face. Kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He raised his hands slowly. Easy now, agent. I'm just here as a concerned citizen. Heard all the noise and activity. Wanted to make sure Margaret was safe and okay. How did you know I was here? Yes. My voice was surprisingly steady. He looked at me. Something in his face changed. The kindness faded away. It was replaced by something cold and dead. 'Cause I've been watching. Waiting. 40 years is a long time to wonder if someone will remember what they saw. The world tilted sideways. Daniel, I breathed out. He smiled. And it turned his face into something monstrous and evil. Hello, Emma. Took you long enough to figure it out. Ramos's gun came up fast. But Foster was faster than a man his age should ever be. He grabbed her wrist and twisted it hard. Suddenly he had her gun in his hand. Agents started coming in from the backyard. But Foster already had the gun against my head. Everyone stop right now or Margaret dies, he said. Right here. Right now. Just like her parents died. The agents froze in place. Robert and James started to move toward me. But I shook my head just a tiny bit. I could feel the cold metal against my temple. Could smell the sweat and fear coming off the man I'd called a friend for 3 decades. The man who'd killed my parents. Who'd tried to kill me. Who'd murdered my husband. You set the fire, I said quietly. You were just a boy. Old enough to understand, he said. His voice was rough. Your father was going to destroy everything. Romano's whole operation. I did what had to be done. What I was told to do. And then you became a cop. Changed your name. Built a whole new life in Virginia. Built a perfect life, he said. Until your husband started digging around. Until he figured out who I really was. Foster's grip got tighter on my arm. I tried to warn him nicely. Tried to make a deal. But he wouldn't stop looking. Wouldn't let it go. So I stopped his heart. Easy enough when you know how to do it. A little injection. Looks just like a natural heart attack. You murdered him, Robert said. His voice was breaking with emotion. I got rid of a threat, Foster said. Just like I got rid of Linda Hayes when she talked to your father. Just like I got rid of Eddie Clark when he tried to blackmail me with what his father told him. Foster pulled me backward toward the door. And now I get rid of the last loose end. The witness who's haunted my dreams for 40 years. The little girl who saw my face. You won't make it out of here, Ramos said. There are 6 agents surrounding this house right now. Then I guess we'll see how many people die tonight, Foster said. His hand was steady. His voice was calm. This wasn't panic or fear. This was a man who'd killed before. Who knew exactly what he was doing. Who was comfortable with murder. But he'd made one big mistake. He assumed I was the same scared 5-year-old girl who ran from a burning house. He assumed I was helpless. That I needed others to save me. He didn't know what I'd learned in 40 years of watching and listening. Of preparing for a threat I couldn't name but always felt nearby. He didn't know about the scissors in my sweater pocket. The sharp sewing scissors I'd been carrying since we found the hidden room. Just in case I needed to protect myself. You're right, I said quietly. You've been very careful. Very smart. You became the police chief. The one person who could control investigations. Cover up evidence. Protect yourself from discovery. Exactly, he said. He sounded almost proud. But you made one mistake. One small error. What's that, Emma? What mistake did I make? I drove the scissors backward into his leg as hard as I could. He screamed in pain. His grip loosened for just 1 second. I dropped to the floor and rolled away as fast as I could. Ramos was on him before he could recover. Agents rushed in with guns drawn. And Martin Foster, Daniel Bradley, the monster who'd haunted my life, was on the ground bleeding and cursing. And finally caught. I sat on my living room floor shaking while chaos happened all around me. Robert and James were beside me instantly. Their arms were around me. Their voices were telling me it was over. That I was safe now. But I couldn't stop staring at the man on the floor. The monster who'd stolen my parents from me. My childhood. My husband. Who'd hidden behind a badge and a friendly smile while destroying lives and killing people. What was the mistake? Foster gasped out through his pain. He was looking at me with hatred. But also with something that might have been respect. What mistake did I make that gave me away? I stood up with my sons helping me. I looked down at the man who'd terrorized me without my even knowing it for my whole adult life. You assumed that being old meant being weak, I said. You assumed I'd be easy to control. Easy to kill. Smiled then. It was cold and sharp. But I've spent 63 years surviving. Learning. Watching. Getting ready. I looked him right in the eyes. And Henry spent 40 years teaching me exactly how dangerous it is to underestimate people. How the people everyone thinks are weak are often the most dangerous of all. As the agents dragged Foster away, as paramedics checked my shaking hands, as Ramos congratulated me on my quick thinking and bravery, I felt something break open inside me. Emma Patterson had watched her parents die in a fire. Margaret Thompson had lived a lie for 40 years. But the woman standing in this house right now, surrounded by evidence of secrets and violence and 40 years of hidden truth, she was someone new. Someone made from both identities. Strengthened by both lives. Someone who just stopped a killer with nothing but intelligence, patience, careful watching, and a pair of sewing scissors. Henry had been right about me. I was strong enough to finish what he started. I was smart enough to find the truth. I was brave enough to face it. And I was wise enough to know when to fight and when to let things go. And I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I promise it will surprise you and keep you on the edge of your seat.